Growing Old Alone in America, a cautionary tale for the independent senior. Mr. George Miller from Portland, Oregon, just turned 70 this year. In his younger days, George was laser-focused on building his career. He believed deeply in the freedom of bachelorhood, thinking of himself as a free spirit. Marriage? Children? That just didn't fit into his lifestyle. He enjoyed the quiet of his own company, the unstructured rhythm of his day, and the freedom to come and go without answering to anyone. Life felt like a highway with no traffic lights. But as the years crept up, George's once strong body began to falter. His joints ached more than usual, and fatigue set in quicker than before. The thought started creeping in, what happens if I get seriously ill? Who will be there to help me? And as fate would have it, in July of last year, George suddenly collapsed at home. He was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency surgery. The doctors were clear in their instructions. Rest, eat a light and nutritious diet, no stress, no strain. George nodded obediently, but inside, his heart sank. There wasn't a single soul at home to cook him a warm meal, let alone help him recover. Not a spouse, not a roommate, not even a neighbor who checked in. Desperate and at a loss, George finally reached out to his niece, Lisa, a woman he hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Lisa's a good person, just overwhelmed. She's got 2 kids, a full-time job, a dog, and a mortgage. But seeing her uncle so helpless moved her heart. After some discussion with the family, they decided to move George into a nearby assisted living facility. At first, George resisted the idea with all his might. "I'm not a baby," he grumbled. "I don't need strangers telling me when to eat or sleep." But after much persuasion, uncle by uncle, cousin by cousin, he reluctantly agreed. The first few weeks weren't too bad. But by month 3, George was miserable. The food was bland and unfamiliar. It upset his stomach. The man in the next room snored like a freight train. 3 nights, George complained on the phone to Lisa. 3 nights I haven't slept because of that man snoring. I might as well be sleeping in a subway tunnel. Every time there was a minor issue, the facility would call Lisa. "Your uncle needs this, your uncle forgot that," until Lisa was burnt out. She gently suggested, "Uncle George, maybe it's better if we hire someone to take care of you at home." He heard what she wasn't saying. She couldn't juggle it all. And who could blame her? So George stayed at the facility, no longer arguing, but quietly growing dimmer. Half a year later, George was a shadow of the man he used to be. His once sharp eyes had lost their gleam. The man who had built companies, led teams, and made bold decisions now spent his days staring at the ceiling, silent and dulled. Maybe that's just life. It's not quite misery, not quite happiness. Just the slow fading of a once vibrant flame. The quiet epidemic, seniors aging alone. George's story, while uniquely his own, isn't unusual. In fact, it's increasingly common. Many seniors find themselves in their golden years alone. No partner, no children, no one to check in daily. Some were widowed, others never married. Some, like George, chose the single life freely when they were younger. They insisted on quality over compromise and figured they could age independently. For a while, that works. But what happens when independence turns into isolation? I recently watched a documentary called Spinster Sisters, and it stirred something in me. It followed a group of elderly women, mostly in their 80s and 90s, who had never married. They had chosen, long ago, to remain single and never tie their lives to a man's. They even performed their own hair-combing rituals, a symbolic act of declaring self-sufficiency. One woman, Eleanor Parker, 91, had a story that stuck with me. She had raised her siblings after their parents died young. When she was 21, she was offered marriage by a wealthy farmer, but she declined, saying, "Marriage means obeying someone else's rules. I've lived my whole life by my own compass. Why stop now?" Eleanor lived alone, but never lonely. She read, gardened, played bridge with friends, and had an amazing sense of humor. Her life was hers alone, and she was proud of that. But not every single elder ends up like Eleanor. Reality check: when illness strikes and no one answers. My aunt, Carol, now 62, is another example. She too lived vibrantly when younger. She was always traveling, taking painting classes, going to jazz festivals. "I don't need a man to feel alive," she'd say with a laugh. But a few years ago, she was hospitalized with severe internal bleeding. I visited her that night, and I'll never forget what she said. "I didn't know who to call. I almost just lay there hoping it would go away." Carol had friends, sure.
Plenty of them.
But when crisis hits, casual friendships don't always translate into action. Her nephews and nieces were sympathetic, but busy with their own lives. Asking for help made her feel ashamed, like a burden. She eventually hired a caregiver, but they didn't click. The woman constantly vented about her husband and troubled teen, and Carol found herself strangely envious. "At least she has someone to argue with," she said. "I don't even have that." Is marriage or parenthood the ticket to a peaceful old age? It's a good question. Does a happy old age depend on whether we married or had children? There's no one-size-fits-all answer. Eleanor thrived alone. Carol struggles. In the end, it may come down to one thing: support when you need it most. Not necessarily a spouse, not necessarily a child, but someone. One heart to hold your hand when yours is weak. One voice to say, "I'm here." The hard truth: having kids doesn't guarantee anything. Let's be real. Some believe that raising children is an insurance policy for old age. But it's not that simple. Just look at Mr. Richard Evans from Kansas. He raised 3 kids, helped with their college tuition, and co-signed loans.
Now?
2 rarely call. 1 lives across the country. He sees them mostly on Christmas, if that. Raising kids is no guarantee. In fact, many elders find themselves emotionally abandoned despite having a full family tree. Instead of banking on children for security, many are shifting their mindset. Build your own safety net. What you can do: planning for old age, alone or not. Experts say there are 3 critical pillars for aging gracefully and securely. 1. Housing. Where will you live? Will you modify your current home or downsize to a more manageable space with accessibility features? Think elevators, proximity to hospitals, grocery stores, and friends. 2. Care network. Who will help you when you're sick? Can you afford a professional caregiver? Do you have a group of friends you can trust and rely on? 3. Health maintenance. Are you actively keeping yourself in good shape? Yearly checkups, walking daily, light strength training, a balanced diet, plenty of water, and managing sleep? These things matter more than ever now. 4. Finances. Do you have control over your money? Are your funds accessible and protected from scams or manipulation by others, even family? Being in charge of your own retirement funds is empowering. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. And finally, remember this: you can live alone and live well. Like Ms. Betty Thompson, age 74, a widow in Vermont. She never moved in with her kids. "They have their lives and I have mine," she says. Every morning, she opens the curtains, makes her tea, stretches, and walks her garden path. She joined an online calligraphy club, bakes cookies for neighbors, and FaceTimes with her granddaughter every Sunday. She lives not in loneliness, but in dignity. "I'm not waiting to be rescued," she told me once. "I've already built my lifeboat." Aging is inevitable. But how we age, where, with whom, and in what state of mind, is still in our hands. Whether you marry or not, have children or don't, the important thing is to plan, to act, to prepare. Because as Betty says, don't wait until the night falls to find a flashlight. Light your own path while the sun still shines. If this story has touched you, share it with others. Maybe it'll inspire someone to take the first step in building a bright and secure future for themselves. And remember, it's never too late to choose joy.